Welcome to the Landscaping Podcast. My name is Joel Barnett and I'm your host. And today's episode is a Q&A episode, just like the ones we did last year. And that is purely because I haven't had a guest organised for this week. So apologies for that. But today I'm recording this 4 hours before this episode comes out. So it's Sunday as I'm recording this. And tomorrow I'll be sending out at least 10 messages to people to see if I can get them to come on the podcast. So over the next couple of weeks, I should be doing a few bulk recordings. So then I'll have a few all lined up, and then hopefully then once I get a few in the bank, then I can just try and do one a week from there. But yeah, I've said to everyone who I talked about the podcast that the only thing I don't like about it is organising guests. So that's why that has not been done too well recently. But I'll get back on the horse. And it's the first time I haven't had an episode. I actually think the second time I haven't had an episode because the first time was the first Q&A episode that I did, but 2 episodes out of 100 and something is not too bad. The first question came in from Double Bogey Luke saying, no question, just wanted to say I'm glad that he's back. Yeah, I did enjoy seeing some of the questions that come through. And there's, some ones that really got me thinking, so it was good to see what came through. And then there's also questions like this next one, which I do also enjoy, from Simoscapes, said, how are you so handsome? So obviously a YouTube viewer there. Just genetics, I'd say. Thank you to my dad, because I look a lot like him, and good news for my son, he looks a lot like me. So some good genes there, depending on your preference, obviously. Outback Gardens said, what your go-to materials? Timber, stone, pavers, etc. I do have, there's certain trends that people go through, and I certainly like that as well. Like I've got certain pavers that I like to use, and certain also colors. So it might be using certain colors of plants. I could do like the grey, green, and white kind of combo when I'm choosing plants. And in terms of timber, I don't do a lot of decks unless the client asks for it, because I don't like people don't like maintaining it, and if they don't get maintained, they don't look any good. Like a silver deck is obviously nice, but it does still require a little bit of maintenance. And when you compare that to paving, it's a lot more. And also the cost of it. So decking is a lot more expensive than paving. So I usually like to, and we usually look putting a lot of things into the design. So try and save a bit of money where you can. So doing paving is my preference over decking. But if I was going to do decking, like we're doing one right at the moment, and we're using spotted gum, and that's a beautiful looking timber. Like everyone comments on how good it looks when that goes in. But I also don't mind black butt. So they'd be 2 timber decking preferences. But I also like using recycled sleepers, like whether that's as pavers, so lay it on the ground. You can also chop it up and use it as garden bed edging, so it's shorter lengths. You can get some nice curves using them. The only thing I don't like about that is I like the look of the natural end, or the aged end of it. So when you cut it, it looks a lot different, but as long as they all look the same, and that's all good. In terms of stone, at my place, I'm using the, I can't remember what it's called now. It's a crazy paving, and it's kind of like a quartzite product, I think. Yeah, the name escapes me, but Eco call it Endicott. Better Exteriors call it Alba Crazy Paving, and Granite Works call it Cavalis Slate, I think. So they've all got different names for the stone, but it's all extremely similar, if not exactly the same. So it's kind of like a light grey granite looking product. But it's the only negative about it is it's a little bit undulating. So because it's kind of like a slate product, it's not all calibrated. So that's makes it, like, you'll probably get some pooling in there if you don't have enough fall on there. But yeah, it's a beautiful looking stone. Everyone loves the look of it, so that's what I like in terms of the stone. But I'm also excited about a project that we designed, that Emma's designed for Clifton Springs, I think, coming up later in the year, or next year, where we're going to be using a pink limestone. So that's going to be pretty cool. I haven't used that before. So it's exciting when clients like not only when we come up with the design, but also when the clients love it as well and happy to go ahead. So that'll look pretty awesome. But in terms of pavers, I do like crazy paving at the moment, but that's also, again, it's expensive. So there's times where it's not the right option to go with when there's other expensive things included. That's something I'm noticing a lot with people talking about whether things are getting quiet now. But something I do notice is people, even though they're spending a lot, they're all dialing it back. So there's a lot of cost saving measures that we're having to do after the initial design, but still, still crazy amounts of money to be spent on some projects. But in terms of pavers, I can't think of any that I do more than others. Just like, again, there's a bit of bluestone or granite, but nothing that's a real go-to for me. So it's usually whatever works with the project and the site. So if we're doing a project in Geelong West or the older suburbs of Geelong, and you can go with the bluestone because that's what was there initially, and there's some old cottage style houses that works really well with. So, but yeah, that was a good question. And another one here, good one from Husweight Landscapes, said, would you purchase a mini excavator or a Bobcat mini loader as your first machine? And I was just talking about that recently, because if you listen to some of the previous Q&As, I spoke about a lot about how I don't know how to look after a machine, so I don't want to buy one. But then after a while, I think, oh, maybe I should buy one. And then I remember I don't know how to look after it properly, so it's not a good idea. But so we were in stage one of that recently where I think it's a good idea to buy one again. And I was thinking of getting an excavator. And I looked at, like, I saw one that was for sale and it had some amazing attachments on there, so if I had any money, I would have bought it. Even though we use a mini loader a lot more often than we do an excavator, but I just think that an excavator has got more capabilities of what it can do. So if I was going to buy one, it would be an excavator, so a 1.7 ton. The one I was looking at had like all the buckets, an auger attachment, and also it had a quick hitch, so you didn't have to get out to change the buckets, and it also had the grabs, like a hydraulic grab, so you can pick up rocks or sleepers or all sorts of things. And that was a really good price. So yeah, if I was going to get one, and it won't surprise me if I do have one within a year, because again, an excavator doesn't break down as much as what a mini loader does, because they're moving a lot faster. And depending on how you use it, if you're not just using it to load and you're using it to dig, then they're going to be a lot, they get bashed around a lot more. Next question is from Tom Lynch. And he said, have you ever had a clause in your quotes for rock under the ground or extra fill needed after the quote, or rubbish left on site after a new build? The rubbish left on site is a good one, because I remember my first boss telling me that part of our role as a landscaper is to clean up everyone else's mess, because they just leave it there and we've got to get our work done. So I haven't ever put anything in there, but that's something that we keep an eye on. And when there's other trades on site, I don't like to leave a pile of our rubbish to get rid of, because if we start making a pile of rubbish, other people start adding to it. So I'm always big on getting rid of it as soon as you can, because you might start leaving a pile of soil and people just start chucking rubbish in it as well, because they haven't got a clue on what it's like to actually get rid of it, and the fact that you actually get rid of it as clean fill rather than mixed rubbish. But in terms of a clause in the quote, I replied to him and sent him my actual clause that's in there, that this is item number 1 on every single quote that I do. And it says, site excavations and rubbish removal as required to accommodate proposed landscape works. Note, in cases of encountering unforeseen tree roots, rock, concrete, asbestos, and or any other hazardous material, any associated costs involved in its removal may be forwarded onto the client. So that was something that Jack, the previous owner of Install, had on his quote. So I just used that as well. And I think twice I've had to use it. So not very often, but it can be a thorn in your side if you don't have it in there and something goes wrong and you're having to get rid of concrete or asbestos. So one of the times was asbestos because we loaded concrete into the truck and not knowing it was in there. And then when we got to the tip, realised it was there, so we had to pay extra to get rid of it. And then the other time was we pulled up a concrete driveway, and there was a concrete driveway underneath it. So yeah, that's unfortunate for the client because they had to pay for it, but I'd rather them pay for it than me. But it's definitely worth having it in there, and I'll leave it in there even when we're not doing like much excavation at all. So it could even just be if we're planting a tree, I'll still leave it in there because if you start digging a hole and then it turns out someone had put a bag full of asbestos there or something, then you want to have yourself covered. Steph Townsend said, with corten steel edging, how do you go about creating bends and curves in the steel? So if they're a nice sweeping curve, obviously you can just do that, by putting the stakes in the right spot where you want it to go, and you can have it curved softly. We don't use a lot of the corten steel. We'll use mild steel. So it's 75 by 5mm steel, and they're 6 meter lengths. So that helps you to get some nice big sweeping bends in it. But in terms of if you want like a sharper bend, you can use a car tire. So you take your spare tire off the ute or trailer, and you can sort of bend it around that. I'm sure there's like pipe benders or something that does it a bit more accurately to certain degrees, but for stuff on site, it's good to have something that you can bend it around, and you don't want to use something sharp because then it's a bit too much of an angle. So that's what we'll use if we're needing to bend something. You can also stand on it and lift it, bend it a little bit, and then move it and bend it a little bit. Just got to do that. You're better off doing it too gently than too much because you could always bend it more, but you can't bend it less. You can't straighten it out. It doesn't look any good. So, yeah, but we haven't had any sharp bends or anything in there. Abcam Horticulture said, is there one job that you're more proud of than any other? And who was it designed by? I don't know if there is any. Possibly the one which I posted about recently, where we did some travertine crazy paving, and there was like I didn't measure how many meters of mitered edges there were, but I loved the amount of mitered edges that were in it. Certainly didn't make any money on it, but that was it, where we did a lot of mitered steps, and then that was what I also did in the garden show for that same reason, because I loved how it looked using the single pieces of stone over multiple faces and treads of a step. So I reckon that one would be something I was pretty proud of. I'd like to do one again because I reckon I'll be better at it. So sort of color matching the edges of the miters to the stone, and even potentially putting a little bit of character in it, like the stone's got character in it. So there's always room for improvement, no matter how well you do something. But yeah, Bethany Williamson designed that one. And yeah, I liked just how much, because I like construction and there was a lot of construction in that. So that's why I enjoyed that one as much. Andrew 3088 said, how long before your course will be released? Well, that's a good question because I have just started up an email list for it. So I thought I should I've been wanting to do that for a while, but not wanting to know which one I should use. But if when I started looking into it, I thought I could just use the one that's on my website, and then that'll work well with the I think they transfer that across to the course once that's up and running, and then people will be able to get emailed through that. So in terms of when it's starting, a question a lot of people ask me is how do I have time to do everything that I do, because I do work and the podcast and the course, and then there's various other things, but I only do one thing at a time. So if I'm doing the podcast, I'm not doing anything else. And if I'm working, I'm not the same deal. So I've been doing a lot of working at the moment to try and get some stuff done and make a dollar. So the course hasn't been getting done. And also I do it mainly on Saturdays, and I've had some social events. We're just catching up with friends on two of the last 3 Saturdays. So yeah, that also goes back to work-life balance. It's like I'm not sacrificing anything in my life to do work. So the work is what comes last when it can. So yeah, I just basically am doing the course when I can. But yeah, that's why when I started the Instagram page, I put that it was being released mid-year because I didn't have any particular time on when it was going to get released. But hopefully, I reckon it still will be mid-year. If I was forced to pick a month, it might be June. But knowing me, it'll be more likely July because I'm about maybe halfway through making the course, like doing the filming. But the next thing I've got to do is edit what I've done, and then make sure I'm happy with that. And then when I am, then I can make the rest of the course, and then edit that again. And then because I don't know if I'm going to release any of it until it's all done. But depends how long. If we get to June and there's still heaps more to do, and I've already got some ready to go, then I might. But ideally, I'd like to release it all at once. And I'm also trying to do some extra elements that I wasn't going to do initially. So there's a few paving ones, but also want to potentially put a pond building one in there. So that'll be part of my work this week, is finding out if we can do that. But I reckon I might be able to be editing on Saturday, although I do have some designs I've got to do. So yeah, it's a challenge working around that. But the course is the least important thing to get done at the moment, even though it's what I want to be doing. So I've got to get through the actual things to pay the bills first, and then I can get onto the course. But I reckon it'll be out in winter. And if we're starting to get towards June, and I don't think it's going to be mid-year, then I'll say winter, because then that gives me August as well. The next question is from Housemates Get Plants Delivered. And Dan has said, what's your take on the current outlook for the landscaping and construction industry? It seems though out there for many at the moment. It seems tough out there for many at the moment, but maybe we are back to normal. And that's a good point, because because it's been flat out for, like, before COVID happened, we were still booked out for like 12 months in advance, maybe 9 at worst. So we've been flat out for 5 or 6 years. So when you are in a big bubble like that, where everything's flat out and you can pick and choose which jobs you want to work on, you can forget what normal is like. But yeah, like I've certainly haven't had much of a drop off in designs or construction, and like the construction projects, like I said before, they're all massive as well, so they take a while to do, and we've got enough design work to keep Emma busy, and myself as well doing some. So yeah, we've still got plenty in, but every now and then there'll be a bit of a quiet period, but it's only for like 3 weeks, sort of. It's not long-term periods of quietness. So yeah, like some people I've talked to say it's getting quieter. I think the designers would be the first ones who are going to start noticing it, because the project pipeline starts with them. Some people may talk to volume builders and they're saying it's quieter, but yeah, depends when you talk to someone and what day of the week it is, really. So like Dan said, back to normal. So that's kind of what it's going to be. So it's just like, just because of the past 5 years, the phone's been going berserk. It won't be getting tough. It'll just be getting quieter, which is back to normal. So yeah, I'm certainly not concerned about anything. We've got, in terms of value, a year and a half worth of work booked in. So I'm supposed to get it all done within a year. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, it's and also I think it's the people who are more impacted by rate rises are going to be the ones who count their pennies more, so are less likely to get landscaping done. So that's people who are in the not crazy wealthy, basically. So people who are impacted more by the interest rate rises are the people who are earning less, so they can have less to spend on landscaping because it's not as critical as other parts of their life. And I can't remember what it was. I heard something today about people spending less money on a certain thing. I can't remember what it was, but But yeah, it's getting quieter, but it's not at alarm levels. So yeah, but I remember at the start of COVID, people say so. COVID happened in March or April, so just about 4 years ago on the dot, and people were saying, yeah, it's busy now, but it's going to get quiet around September, October. So that was 3.5 years ago, and it hasn't happened yet. So maybe now, maybe they meant September, October 2024. So maybe it's starting to happen. But it's a good reason to have a look at your business and work out how are you making your money, and if you're charging enough, so that when things do go quiet, that what you're charging is going to keep you heading in the right direction with an uptick in your profitability. And then if you start to lose a bit of work, or you're not getting as much work and you're starting to freak out about how much pipeline you got ahead of you, reach out to someone and let them know. So if they get inquiries that they don't want, they can send it to you. Like that's certainly the case with me. I get inquiries all the time, so I'll send them off to people. So yeah, just reach out to people in your area and just let them know that, like, don't be ashamed, because that doesn't mean you're a bad person or a bad landscaper or designer or anything. And they might be in the same boat. So then you can work out a plan of how you both might be able to get out of it. But yeah, just reach out to other people and let them know that you could do with a hand with some inquiries. And then yeah, that will help you get through that tough period. But I don't think you need to be careful about charging less to sort of buy work. That's again why you want to work out how much you need to be charging, because you could quote a job less so that you win it, and then while you're doing that one, another one comes along that you can't take on that would have been a good one to do. So it's a bit of a tricky one. Cascade Landscape said a how-to on social media success. So I'm loving the walkthrough Wednesdays that Tim's doing. So that I reckon is one of the great keys to success in social media, is getting yourself out there and showing your face on camera, because the clients they'll rather than just seeing a name that they're going to ring up and inquire about getting the landscaping done, they can see the person who's going to come out there to do the inquiry. So I reckon it's a great thing. And yeah, not everyone is everyone's cup of tea. So they might see you and think, I don't want that person coming to my place. So, but that's a good thing, because if you did, you'd go out there, like if they didn't know the type of person you were, you would go out there. And I'm not saying that anything wrong with Tim as a person, but I'll use me for an example. Some people think I look a bit angry all the time, so it takes a bit of getting used to, my personality. So rather than me going out to a job and then we go through the, dancing around saying, this is what we want. Yep, I'll do that quote for you, blah, blah, blah. And then I'll quote it for them and you never hear from them again because they didn't like, the vibe I was giving off or whatever. If they had watched their Instagram and see me on there, then they might have realized that I wasn't the person for them. So that would save the time for me not going out there. So that works both ways. They can see that they don't want you to come out there, or they can see that you are the type of person that they want to come out there. So, and in that situation, you've usually won the job before you've even got there. So, yeah, I think it's a great thing to do. And it also can help you look at projects differently. So you might be walking around your project, giving an example of what you're doing, and you might think about it from a viewer's point of view, and that might make you think of a different, angle, or, just it certainly doesn't hurt walking around a project and sharing what you're up to. And the more you put out, the more chance you've got something going well. So it's the old adage of throwing enough stuff up at the wall and some of it sticks. That's exactly what I've done. And I had a few posts that got a lot of views, and then you get followers, and then people think you're a bigger deal than you are just because you've got Instagram followers. So yeah, but just be yourself, and also reply to comments as well. It drives me nuts when you see people commenting on someone else's post and they just ignore it. So they'll put a post out saying, look how good I am. And then other people say, yep, it looks amazing. And then they don't say thank you or anything at all. So, get back to people when they leave you a comment. Alt House Landscape Design said, when was your last haircut? I reckon by the looks of it, seven weeks ago. I'd have to go through the bank transactions, but I'm due for one, but it's not high on the priority list. The haircut is behind the landscaping course in the priority list. So, but also it doesn't take as long, so I can just duck in there and get it. But I had to leave it outside of the school holidays because you don't get a haircut on the school holidays because I don't. I just go to a barber and don't book in. You just go up there and chuck your name down, and there's heaps of school kids there on school holidays because their mums want to get their haircut looking good before they go back to school. So you got to leave that week of the 2 weeks of the school holidays and also the week after, and then maybe we can get one soon. And the last question is from Waddell Design, saying, how did the battery excavator go? So when I spoke to him on the podcast, I think the next day we were going to be trialing a battery excavator, a 1.7 ton Wackenhausen, and it was an interesting experience. So I didn't go out there, I didn't see it at all, but one of the guys was using it, and he said in terms of moving around and digging and doing all the excavator things, it was just as good as a diesel powered one. So he was just digging holes for trees with the 350 bucket or 450 bucket, but it was the hire company said it would last 6 hours. And I think after 4.5 hours, he charged it for half an hour, because I think it got down to maybe 9%. So he didn't want it to die, because then what do you do when the battery dies? I suppose you could run some extension leads out to it, but it was on a massive property. I think it was 6,000 square meters, so it would have been a lot of extension leads to get out to it. So he charged it and then did a little bit more and then got it back onto the trailer. So yeah, that was enough to make me think I would never buy one, because you don't there's not a lot of the times you're using one for 4.5 hours straight or more, but when you do want to, you don't have to recharge it. But then I was listening to a podcast might have been Luke Smith's podcast, the Australian Lawn and Garden podcast, I think. Someone was talking about batteries and how they have a lag in it. So when they are being used a lot, they start to heat up. So what it would say on if there was a percentage meter on how much battery was left on there, it says it's got less than it's actually got because it's warmed up. So then if you got off it and cooled it down, then it goes higher. So even though that it said it had 9% left on it, it actually had more. But I don't know what the point is of saying it's got more. Like if it gets down to 0, is it going to conk out then? But then if you leave it, it'll get a higher charge. So I don't know how that works, but yeah, in terms of everything outside of the longevity of the battery, it was perfect. But I certainly wouldn't be getting one unless they want to send me one for free. Then I would be a lot more generous in my description of it. So if Wackenhausen is listening, feel free. I do like your stuff, so we can hook that up. But that was the last question. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for everyone who listened and also submitted a question. Won't be a weekly thing again, but maybe we can get a guest on this week. Pretty sure I've got one lined up, but I reckon we'll be back to normal programming next week, and we'll talk to you then.